the first anniversary celebration of Renew Healthcare in association with Red Labs. We on behalf of Renew Fertility are honored to have you here for the evening. Renew Healthcare is a dream which Rajiv and me have been seeing through years. We wanted to start an organization which will have a holistic approach to women's health. With this vision, we embarked on our nascent journey on 1st November 2021 with hope, vigor and passion. In the last 1 year, we have had a roller coaster of ride in this humble endeavor. But it was the sheer desire to contribute to the society and expand our horizons that in this process we kept moving forward. We thank our team which has worked tirelessly to help us overcome these initial difficulties, and we are now sitting in high seas with pride. This would not have been possible without the support of all of you who have restored love and blessings over the newborn baby that is Renew. We thank you for that. Rajiv's focus has always been bringing new technologies to East India, be it the first PGT case or the first egg freezing program in the city. So it is not a coincidence that we wanted to celebrate the first anniversary of Renew with a scientific program. So here we are. We start the evening with the lamp lighting.
Tuberculosis elimination program. There is a fundamental change here because the focus from control is now for elimination. As I said, tuberculosis is a disease of great antiquity. There was a time when it was known as phthisis, and if you see a person like the one that just walked in, you would be able to make a diagnosis straight away. But in many others, diagnosis is a very big problem. However, Mycobacterium tuberculosis have been found in fossil bones some 8,000 BC. They've also been found in Egyptian mummies and it's been mentioned in Rig Vedas. However, it was Hippocrates, who's considered as the father of medicine, who felt that it was hereditary, though he also mentioned that there was a different smell to a person who suffers from tuberculosis. So it was left to Robert Koch, who was a general physician practicing in Göttingen, a small town about 200 kilometers away from Berlin, the capital of Germany. He traveled with his finding of finding a bacteria that he got from tuberculosis patient. He injected into 94 guinea pigs, 70 rabbits, 44 mice and 9 cats, and from each one of them he isolated similar bacteria. Then when he travelled to Berlin to inform Virchow, who was the professor of pathology, he was thrown out of his room. On 24th March 1882, Robert Koch described to the physiologist of Berlin that he has discovered a bacteria which causes tuberculosis. For this, he was given a Nobel Prize in 1905. The bacteria was subsequently named as Mycobacterium, and at this moment there are 171 species in the genus Mycobacterium. The name was coined because in liquid culture, the bacteria grows as a pellicle, more like a fungus. So myco comes from mycology and bacteria because this is a bacteria. Mycobacterium, two species of mycobacterium are always pathogenic. Mycobacterium tuberculosis and Mycobacterium leprae. Others are opportunistic or commensals. WHO has been issuing a number of guidelines, and it was during the lockdown enforced by COVID that all the guidelines were collected together, and in January 2021 they issued 4 sets of consolidated guidelines. The first set dealt with prevention, second set dealt with screening, third is on diagnosis, and fourth on treatment. And I would urge you to go through it because they appear to have changed nearly everything in tuberculosis.
We thank Dr. Rattan for his wonderful presentation. I am sure if he would have been here, we would have a lot of questions for him. Next, I would call upon for our next speaker, Dr. Dipanjana Datta, is to speak on infertility and recurrent pregnancy loss. Dr. Dipanjana is a doctorate in molecular genetics with 14 years of experience in the field of human genetics. She completed the postdoctoral fellowship from Virginia Commonwealth University, USA. She is a level 2 certified geneticist by the Board of Genetic Counseling, India. She is also the state coordinator for Organization of Rare Disease, India. Dr. Datta is engaged as a genetic counselor with Renew Healthcare. To chair this session, I would like Dr. Nahid F. Khan, who needs no formal introduction. She has been a motherly figure for all of us for decades. It's an honor for Renew family to have her amongst us. And I would like Dr. Shamal Ranjan Sarkar to chair the session with Dr. Khan, please. So we welcome Dr. Datta, Dr. Khan and Dr. Sarkar on the stage.
I am, as introduced, I am the medical geneticist. I work with Renew Healthcare, and just to start, because it becomes very difficult, to understand why I am needed at all, if I am needed or not in this crowd. So today, with a few slides and few case studies which we have already done, we would like to understand what is the role of genomics in the present era. So this is, in this esteemed crowd, it's actually not necessary to repeat all these definitions, but then again it's customary to have introductory slides, and hence, so infertility, obviously if a couple is unable to conceive for some amount of time, about 12 months, without with unprotected sex, we will call it as infertility. And we also break it into primary and secondary. The primary would be where the couple never has a child, and the secondary would be when the couple is unable to conceive even after having one child. Now, when we look at the causes, obviously it's a group thing. So it's a man and a woman and the egg and the sperms coming together. So the causes also obviously have the male factor, the female factor, and a factor which we say as combined or unknown, but now as days go by, that unknown factor is becoming more and more clear. So if we look at the female factors, it can be the hormones, the oogenesis, the implantation, the pregnancy, anything can go wrong over here. While in the male factor, again, the hormones, the spermatogenesis or erection, ejaculation, anything can go wrong. So it's basically the hypothalamus pituitary gonadal axis that we are looking at. Before the advent of genome or before the advent of gene sequencing, genetics would mean only karyotype. You know that there are 46 chromosomes and that's all you see. But right now we are this, if you are just thinking that genetics would mean chromosome testing, we have come far, far, far away from that. And that would be my effort tonight in the 30 minutes which I have been given to elucidate how this is happening. So whenever we are saying, it is always the count, right? Either it's the egg count or the sperm count. If we look at all the other parameters, ultimately the count of the egg or the count of the sperms are something which is important. Now obviously when we are looking at egg count, there is also the first thing that comes to the mind is okay, the pregnancy is not happening because there might be low ovarian reserve. Now low ovarian reserve, if we rule out the hormonal normal reasons, can also be due to genetic causes. We don't check, but fragile X is one of the most common reasons for low ovarian reserve. So if you look at here, we have an individual with a pre-mutation. This mutation is something which is not something that will cause a disease, and maybe she has no family history, but she presents with a POF, and if you are missing this, you are not only actually bringing her at risk because her egg reserve will end fast, you're also putting, and if you just go ahead and do an IVF, you maybe are putting at a risk of the next generation as well, because if she has a male child and there's an expansion, there will be a child who is born with Fragile X syndrome, which might lead to certain neurodevelopmental issues. Now again, just the counseling that having an extra, like the pre-mutation which we call, so till 55 the expansion of Fragile X is normal, but if we have more than 55 till around lesser than 200, we are calling it as pre-mutation. Now not all pre-mutations will expand, not all pre-mutations would require an immediate action. There is certain other things which we call as the AAG repeat, which will actually tell us that whether this will expand or not expand and what is the percentage. So a single report can give us so much of an information. Again, I cannot stress more of the hypothalamus pituitary and the gonadal axis, but then again, that's more or less when a patient comes, it would be probably investigated by you, or if you haven't, then it would be investigated by the infertility specialist. And sometimes you might end up with a condition of hypogonadotrophic gonadism or hypergonadotrophic gonadism. This can be due to immune reasons, but at the same time there can be underlying genes. As more and more gene sequencing or exome sequencing are coming up, we have 22,000 genes, and right now about 200 genes are related to infertility. And how can they change what you are managing? If a person has a mutation in genes like CEP120, NCMB, these genes actually promote increased egg aneuploidy, which means that the embryo would have a poor prognosis because there will be a chromosomal euploidy present. So these are actually guiding us as to what we should do and what the management would be. Right now there are, like if you just search infertility female genetics, you will see that every step of oogenesis probably has a list of genes which are present. Also, not only that, like we also right now know the susceptibility factors. So there are mutations which are complex. It's not a single gene. Like single gene disorders would be something like thalassemia. But there are mutations which are complex, which actually prove susceptibility. Certain people would respond to certain drugs well, certain people will not respond to certain drugs well. And that becomes extremely important when we are doing infertility, because rather than using drugs blindly, now you have a personalized list of what drugs to use and who will respond how. So though all of this matters, the PCOS, ovarian reserve, the endometrium risk, the Muralian degenesis, what also matters in infertility practice with genetics is the pharmacogenomics of the ovarian stimulation. So there are, again, as I said, more and more genes being discovered and there are network. But the real-time case study is, this is from one of our patients, where you can see that what we have found is a mutation in the LHCGR gene. It's basically a gene which is a receptor to the luteinizing hormone. And in this case, if we don't do anything, there will be slow response to ovarian stimulation, while an LH stimulation would be favorable and this person would be in a better place to respond to the cycle and probably have a successful pregnancy. Now obviously we said that Y also matters, like we were talking about the X factor, but the Y being the smallest chromosome does have a say in infertility. So obviously previously what we knew was Y chromosome would be affected by karyotype. So, and what is most important is the sperm count. This is what we all would do. But there are genes or there are situations, genetics, which are responsible for spermatogenesis and which will be actually controlling these factors, which can help you to know that if we are not seeing a sperm, where is the arrest, and that where is the arrest will guide us to managing this patient. So common reasons would be obviously Y chromosome microdeletion, chromosomal abnormalities, single gene polymorphisms, even mitochondrial microdeletions and mutations or deletions. Now there is an established way to actually assess this, like if there is, whether it is obstructive like azoospermia or whether it's a non-obstructive azoospermia. Earlier we used to think that only non-obstructive obstructive azoospermia is the one where we would need genetics, but right now that is also not true, because obstructive azoospermia can also have situations like CFTR and other variables which are there. So this is something which we know when we know the Y chromosome microdeletion. We also understand that this is a region on the Y chromosome, but what is deleted, A, B or which combination C, can help us to understand that whether we will get sperms by TESA-PESA and whether this person can go ahead with the ICSI. But Y chromosome microdeletion is not the only thing that you need to check. There are about number of disorders reported which are autosomal recessive, autosomal dominant, X-linked or Y-linked, which can actually have an association with less sperm count. This is the axis, and this, if I lead you through, these are the genes which are actually identified in each of these parts, each of these functions, and there is a lot more still being discovered. Now, this is a case study which we have, which is saying that a couple is, it's a non-consanguineous couple and they have a history of primary infertility, and this person came to us with azoospermia. Now, when we screened, we found that there is a deletion in the AZF-C region with a heterozygous deletion in the FSH beta region. So, how should we manage? Should we say that, you know, there is no sperm so we cannot do anything? That is not correct, because we know again the region where this is deleted will guide us. If it is C, then probably we will get spermatids in the testis, and from there we can retrieve, and from there you can proceed for a for an ICSI. So in these cases, but also here there is a FSH mutation. If the FSH mutation is involved, we know that this person would have a problem in the testicular volume, in the sperm count, which will add to the Y chromosome microdeletion. But a treatment with a recombinant FSH will actually be beneficial and probably be helpful before we do that ICSI. So again, this patient can be managed in a better way. So hence, at the present moment, a disease identification, the risk identification and the stratification can help in personalized treatment for these particular patients. Now, when we are speaking of infertility, there is actually an overlap between the recurrent pregnancy loss as well. There are many factors which are actually contributing, or as if it is sort of overlapping. I've marked these factors over here, like obviously chromosomal rearrangements etc. might be on the on both the sides and also in between, but there are also a lot of uterine endocrine factors, also genetic factors like aneuploidy. But then again, we should stop and say that no, aneuploidy is not just only, chromosomes are not only the ones which are responsible. So this is by Eshrey, which says that if it is a 6 to 10 weeks pregnancy loss, the chance of it being a hormonal and genetic cause is very, very high. And hence these needs to be investigated. If you're seeing recurrent pregnancy losses around the first trimester, it definitely needs to be investigated. So now again, this is a case study where you see that this person has 4 failed IUIs and IVFs. Also, a donor did not work. Like if I now ask this question to the hall, what do you think? What would you do next? What do you think you will do next? So maybe many of you would answer that, you know, probably we will go ahead, and it seems like it's a male factor because, you know, even changing the egg also, it's the same thing that is happening. Exactly, that was what we did, a very basic test of karyotype and we found a translocation. So this is also a thought that many of us, we think that we only need to investigate the female. The female had the karyotype done, but the male didn't. And in this case, this is what was the cause, and probably the management would change. Similarly, is karyotype the only factor? So again, the answer is no, because this person came to us with a BOH, but see, this sperm DNA fragmentation was very poor. Now again, if you see very closely the family history, just look at his two siblings. They also have a similar history, and that strikes a chord for more investigations. When we looked through, we actually did a chromosomal microarray, and we found a deletion in chromosome 1p. This actually is a so small a deletion that this person is not syndromic. All deletions will not lead to syndromes. It might be that there are certain things which we are not looking at. On closer history, the person did had a global developmental delay, but that was on the outset after we got the report, we knew. So the family history itself can tell you a lot. So again, this is, if I draw your attention, I know it's a gory picture and I'm sorry for that, but just to draw your attention to that, this is an IUFD at 4.5 months. Many of you will not investigate this, but it is mandatory to see these, because most of this, as reported in literature, the percentage of aneuploidy is very high. So if you do a fish and if you are just testing for 21, 13, 18 and X, you will miss a trisomy in 14. So maybe we need to shift, and also the ACMG guidelines say that, you know, chromosomal microarray should be your first line of test. Again, this was a very interesting case. Now again, see, it's a similar situation. A number of miscarriages, number of IVF failures, even with the donor. But here you see there is no history in the male side. The history is more towards the female side. And one of the very basic things what we looked was the ACA, APLA, everything was normal, but still this woman had an APTT which was delayed. So there is something which we call as the hereditary thrombophilia, and there are molecules other than the APLA, ACA, factor V, protein S and protein C. There was a mutation in the HRG which was upstream, and that was causing the problem. And this actually just does not stop in the thrombophilia contribution, but it also actually has issues where the fetus will also have IUFD, and that is what we saw. So in these cases, management or counseling the patient becomes very important. So again, this is one case which was very interesting, because here the couple had BOH, but the fetus were there was problem at 18 weeks and 21 weeks, and in the second case we got a lemon-shaped called hydronephrosis, and it looked like an amniotic band syndrome. They came to us, they were originally from Ranchi. They came to us, and what we found was that yes, it looked like a family history which is okay, but if you look at the man, this is what the man looks like. Now, I don't know if you understand, there is dysmorphism in this man. He has hooded eyes, he has a neck which is webbed, he has a sort of nose which is sort of, you know, like standing out, and this is actually, if we look at it, it's actually an adult Noonan syndrome. When we look at these cases, these adults actually don't have any problem, and it's a gene mutation which we confirmed with. Now, if we have this gene, this person, adults can have Noonan syndromes which can be milder, but the same thing when transferred in the fetus, because of difference in penetrance, things like penetrance and gene variability, it can be severe, and this is exactly what it was. So if the fetus was tested, and if you would have missed the dysmorphisms, probably we wouldn't have done as exome sequencing, and we would have totally missed it because all the other reports were normal. So, yes. So this is another case, again, IUFD oligohydroamnios at 13 weeks and no deformities seen. Thrombophilia panel indicated low protein S and beta-2 glycoprotein. But when I saw this woman, actually Dr. Aditi here and myself, we saw this patient. This patient again had certain features, and when we tested the hand grip was certain. It looked like that her grip was less. Asking questions of her family that whether your mother had miscarriages, yes she had. Do you have palpitations? She said yes I have, but I have been told that is an anxiety disorder. All this again led us to actually do a gene sequencing, and we actually got a gene of myotonia, which is a mutation. It's a muscle problem where there are myotonic runs in the muscle, as a result of which the uterus or the muscle is weak, and it's difficult for her to hold on to these pregnancies. And these are not as uncommon as you are thinking. In our case only, in the last 1 year, we have got about 3 such cases. So in these cases, what to do? What is the solution? So yes, PGT can be a solution, where the embryo biopsy is taken, and the good embryo we test it for either a chromosomal issue or a genetic issue, and the good embryo can be pushed back into the uterus. But then again, is it the answer for all? Like if I do a PGT, will it always be successful? We need to counsel the patient for that also. So many cases, especially with advanced women age, or if there are other chromosomal issues, we might get embryos which are not actually good. Like even if they are aneuploid, see they are all euploid, even if they are euploid, the mitospore in these cases are high, though we would transfer them, but the chance of the implantation would be low. So would you go on cycles for IVF, or would you actually ask them, there are other options you need to look at without spending so much money? So again, you are counseling, though it might not be a desirable outcome, but you are still in a position to understand that what to do for the patient in future. So with this, I would end my talk, and I would actually read this out, that where there is life, there is hope, where there are hopes, there are dreams, where there are vivid dreams repeated, they become goals. Goals become action plans and game plans that winners dwell on in intricate details, knowing the achievement is almost automatic when goal becomes an inner commitment. And that is what I am grateful to Dr. Rajiv. He has been so supportive, and the entire team, Saroj ma'am also. They have been so supportive of whatever I do over there. And if I have achieved anything, and if even one of you know my name in this hall, it is because of Dr. Rajiv and Dr. Saroj ma'am. And hence, thank you, and I am ready to take questions.
Thank you, Dr. Dipanjana, for those kind words, but I think it's sure your capability which has brought you here. I would like to open the forum to the audience. If anyone wants to ask any question, eminent chairperson, anyone can just put some questions over.
The microarray, if we find that there is microdeletion, can it be correctable by gene therapy or anything? By replacing
no
the
genetic condition is correctable, but it can be manageable, right? We can do a PGT, you can ask for a sperm donation, so there are ways where you can go ahead with.
By gene therapy, it is not correctable so far our present knowledge is concerned, no?
So first of all, gene therapy is a very targeted for that particular gene, that particular mutation. For chromosomes, till now there is no gene therapy available, and the gene therapies which are available are for specific disorders, not for these.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now I would like to felicitate the chairpersons and the speaker. Dr. Utpala, can you just come and felicitate Dr. Shamal Ranjan Sarkar, please? Dr. Priyanka. To felicitate Dr. Anamideh Khan. Dr. Rajiv Agarwal, Medical Director, Renew Healthcare, to share his thoughts on the future of fertility management. Dr. Rajiv Agarwal, what can I say about him? His passion and dedication for his work in the field of infertility and his quest to never to stop upgrading himself in this field has brought him accolades and recognition, and that's the very reason why Renew Healthcare was born. I would like Rajiv to give his welcome speech to the audience right now.
Thank you, Saroj, and thank you everyone for coming here. I will take a few minutes of yours before I move on to my presentation. Good evening, and thank you for taking time out from your busy schedules to be here with the Renew Healthcare family. When we started distributing the invitation cards for today's program, a lot of you complained that Rajiv Tomai Bolloina Jay has made such a huge change in his life. So at the outset, I would like to apologize to all of you for having put our heads down and worked incessantly and tirelessly the last 1 year. When we started Renew Healthcare on 1st November 2021, there was a lot of uncertainty, but there were also a few strengths. Faith in our ability to deliver quality infertility care at an affordable cost. Confidence that the goodwill we have created amongst patients and doctors will definitely bear fruits. And lastly, we wanted to erase all the mistakes of the past and then come out better, stronger, and with a more structured organization before we come to you for support. So here we are today, 1 year from inception, seeking your blessings and doing what we love to do, that is share knowledge and information. One may ask, what is different about Renew Healthcare? Come and see for yourself is what I would like to tell you. We have created a very positive environment that patients are loving to enter. Everyone who has stepped into our new home has said that it's full of positivity. Possibly also because for 20 years, thousands of young children have played in those very premises since it was earlier a Montessori school, and their innocence and positivity still lingers in the air. We have worked on putting systems into place so that we have a better patient management platform, better information systems, better feedback mechanism to inform our referring doctors about their respective patients. We have laid special emphasis on taking care of the emotional aspect of our treatment. We have started weekly group therapy sessions and daily one-to-one sessions. Mrs. Pooja Raja, who heads the team, is the only fertility counselor who is a member of the International Fertility Counseling Organization from India and who has done a foundation course in fertility counseling from the British Infertility Counseling Association. Lastly, cost. We have really worked hard on the costs, and you have within your brochure the best package that this city can offer, and most importantly, with all transparency, with every single detail that we offer or don't offer being mentioned there. We assure you of 5 things. We will work hard and with all sincerity and honesty. We are armed with the best knowledge and infrastructure. We do intend to keep costs as low as we can, and we are always open to your suggestions as well as your criticism. We will ensure that your patient always remains yours and that we refer them back to you for every single procedure, be it a fertility enhancing surgery or the ultimate delivery of that precious child. I thank you once again for being here and for spending the evening with us.
Thank you, Rajiv, for that lovely speech. Next for the session, which Rajiv is going to say, that the future of fertility management, I would like to call Dr. Subhash Mukherjee, Senior Consultant, Narayana Hrudayalaya, Howrah, to chair the session, please. And Dr. Tapan Kumar Sarkar, MBBS, MD, Senior Consultant Gynaecologist. Can I please have you both on the stage to chair the session?
When Edward and Steptoe first came out with their IVF babies, they used oral ovulogens for doing their ovulation induction. It was good that Edward met Steptoe, who was coming out with laparoscopy at that time. Otherwise, Edward would never have been able to extract the eggs from the ovary because ultrasound and vaginal egg collection was not possible at that time. And that becomes the basis of my talk today, just to give you an idea, not so much of what has happened from 1978 till now, but give you a bigger glimpse of from here what to look forward in the future. They say that the coming of IVF took the entire glamour and romance out of making babies, because now you don't need to have intercourse to have babies. On the lighter side, that is true, but on the serious side, more than 8 million babies have been born worldwide. And obviously, IVF is a huge boon to every single couple who is childless. A brief look of what has happened since then to now. Implantation rates have crossed more than 50%, which were actually even less than 5% at that time. With the coming of benchtop incubators, we have fantastic blastocysts now growing, and 60% becomes the world average for all embryos of day 3 to go to day 5. Single embryo transfer, I remember because when we started working, Dr. Sadhna Desai's team would come down way back in 2005. And because the embryo freezing conditions weren't very good, because the incubation environment wasn't very good, we would put 2, 3, 4 or even sometimes 5 embryos on day 3. From then on, we've now come to a single blastocyst transfer and yet having the same pregnancy rates that is prevalent worldwide. OHSS free clinics. In those days again, we did not have the antagonist protocol, so we had to use the long protocol. Long protocol, making a lot of eggs, not being able to do a frozen embryo transfer, the OHSS rates were very high. I don't remember a single patient in the last 7-8 years that has gone into OHSS. So now we have completely OHSS free clinics. Better gonadotropins, moving from urinary gonadotropins or urinary HMGs to recombinant FSH, recombinant HMG now, and even those long-acting FSH that you need to give once in 7 days. Of course, it's not available in India, Ilonwa, but it's available in our neighboring countries. Easier egg collection techniques. So obviously in those days, laparoscopy was what was required. It was obviously very tedious. And imagine having one patient went through 43 egg collections to ultimately get pregnant. Imagine undergoing 43 egg collection through a laparoscopy procedure. Today, it's so very simple to do the same with an ultrasound. Personalized embryo transfer or ERA, 256 genes being analyzed from the individual sample to be able to accurately predict when the embryo being transferred would give us the highest chances of implantation. Improved IVF laboratory conditions. In those days, we just had one simple air condition working in the laboratory. Today, the air quality systems are fantastic and comparable to anywhere else in the world. Laser hatching and embryo biopsy have really opened a plethora of opportunities for us. And PGD-A, as Dr. Dipanjan has also spoken, is a great boon to us, especially in women who are on the older side, who had recurrent miscarriages, or when we have a large number of embryos, to shorten their time to a pregnancy. We started last year in November. By the time we set up the lab and we got our licenses for embryo biopsy, etc., it was almost April when we started doing our embryo biopsies. In this short time, we've done 30 PGD-A cases absolutely successfully, and all thanks to Dr. Dipanjana, who's our geneticist, and Saroj, who's our in-house embryologist, one of the finest in the country. Better oocyte and embryo freezing techniques. As I said, way back in Dr. Sadhna Desai's time, we couldn't freeze because slow freezing was very tedious, it took a very long time, and the thaw rates were again not very good. Today with vitrification, the thaw rates are 99 to 100%. Not only embryos, but oocytes, which were not so very good with slow freezing, are brilliant, and now we're doing more and more egg freezing in our lab. I did want to bring out the point of PGT-M, especially for patients who have these kind of disorders. Dr. Dipanjan has already spoken about it, but this patient had come to us having conceived naturally, and unfortunately because both of them were thalassemia minor, the couple landed up with a thalassemia major child diagnosed by amniocentesis during the pregnancy. Obviously, they decided to terminate that pregnancy, then came to us end of 2021. We did an IVF at our clinic, and in May sometimes, this was the report which came out. We did a single embryo transfer in May, and this patient is currently now healthily pregnant. So this is the brilliance of IVF and embryo biopsy. I did want to not dwell, as I said, on the present, but uterine transplantation is something I did want to speak about. Uterine transplantation came about for women who are not having their own uteruses for whatever reason, or the uterus was not good enough for an embryo to be transferred. What is done is the uterus is taken from a woman. A uterus is taken from a woman who has a healthy uterus and is put into someone who does not have a uterus. The surgery lasts for 10 to 13 hours. Not only that, once a uterus is put into this woman, the embryo is transferred, she gets pregnant, she delivers, and then thereafter the uterus is removed back again. And the person whose uterus is removed, or the recipient gets about 4 to 6 hours of surgery. The point is, I don't know who this entire treatment serves, other than probably the ego of the laparoscopic surgeon. Because there are, surrogacy is a boon. It's a fantastic boon. Of course, the Indian government has put in certain restrictions, but it has not stopped surrogacy. But yes, at least for theoretical purposes, uterine transplant is definitely happening. And in India as well, we are becoming one of the biggest institutes for doing uterine transplant. What do we lack at present? What we lack is success rates. We've reached 40%. With embryo biopsy and ERA, we've gone up to 55%. But yet, there is a huge darkness and void beyond that. Darkness for which we don't have answers. When we sit down with a patient, and if you've done everything that is within your power as a doctor, you do have to admit to the patient that, look, I've done everything and I don't know why this is not working out. And we have to keep trying again and again, till such time God, luck or fate gives this patient a success. Convenience and ease of process. Having to juggle their work, their family, careers, distance travels, because everyone does not necessarily live in a city. Maybe you're moving to another city for treatment, taking injections, and also because since we don't know what works and what doesn't work, all of us infertility specialists do pump these patients with a lot of medicines, injections, just in the hope that something is going to work. Standardized protocols. We keep debating at every single conference about what kind of protocols need to be used. There'll be one company coming and saying that HMG can be used for everyone, including PCOS. There'll be another company and another speaker coming and saying only the recombinant FSH should be used. Someone works with antagonist, someone works with agonist. We still don't have standardized protocols for people. We also need an effective answer for three subsets of people. Poor egg quality. When I started doing IVF almost about 21 years ago, at least about maybe 10% of my patients required egg donation. And of those patients, majority of them were of the age of 35 plus. Today, if I have 100 patients walking into my OPD, almost 70 of them have poor ovarian reserve, and I'm sure you face the same in your practice as well. The AMH is less than 1.5, the antral follicle is hardly about 4, 5 or 6. Almost about 40% of our cycles are donor cycles. And what is even more scary is that majority of these women are between the ages of 25 and 35, and we have nothing more to offer to them. Non-obstructive azoospermia. Anyone who knows anything about microtessae will understand that it's an extremely debilitating procedure where small little slices of the testes are made and they're dissected out to find maybe a few sperms. The testis can never be worked on again if one patient has ever undergone a microtessae. Those needing surrogacy, as I said, we still don't know. With the government coming up with certain regulations, it becomes more and more difficult to give these women some hope for if they don't have their own uteruses to use. Risk-free clinics. Although, as I said, the number of risks have come down dramatically, yet risks still remain, and we have to make our clinics absolutely risk-free. And last but not the least, error-free clinics. With embryology becoming better and better, with double witnessing coming in, with the same work is witnessed by 2 embryologists, so that mistakes don't happen. Yet, not just in India, but world over, mistakes do happen, and there are reports of one white woman having one black child and one Caucasian white child. These do happen everywhere in the world. Beyond what we lack is an inherent human quality to dream and then to work towards fulfilling that dream. So whether it was a dream about wanting to fly, whether it was about a dream of converting a desert into what we know today as Dubai, or a dream of going into space as a tourist, everything has been dreamt of, and I'm sure everything in future will be possible. So what then is the future of fertility management? Although three-parent baby is already happening, I still chose to put this into something for the future, because three-parent IVF is being done for those women who have extremely poor egg quality, and the mitochondria or the nucleus in this woman, in this egg, is not very good. If you wish to know more details, I think Dipanjana would be the best person to speak about it. You can direct your questions to her. But as of now, I think about 2 centers across the world are only doing three-parent IVF, and that too, it's only available for experimental areas, not available commercially. So we look forward to a day where every woman is able to conceive with her own eggs, no matter how old she is or how bad her eggs are. As I said, IVF requires a lot of injections. Of those, because most of us are doing now antagonist cycles, antagonist is an additional injection added on to the already gonadotropin injections that patients take. With the coming of elagolix, oral antagonist, obviously some injections are now reduced, and some amount of convenience, as I was talking about, comes for the patient. Moving from in vitro fertilization to in vitro gametogenesis. Imagine a woman who has lost all her eggs, being able to recreate her eggs in the laboratory from her stem cells. Imagine a person with non-obstructive azoospermia, having no sperms and no hope of getting sperms also, being able to create his own sperms in the lab with his stem cells. So that is what we are talking about in the future. There is an emerging role of artificial intelligence in IVF. Like AI is entering every other field, it is entering IVF as well. And there is AI in treatment regimen deciding, AI in gamete selection, and AI in embryo selection as well. AI for the evaluation and selection of oocytes. So when the oocytes come out, the embryologist will take a look at the oocyte and say, I think it is looking all right. But so many a time, something which looks all right doesn't fertilize well, doesn't make good embryos. And on the day of oocyte collection, she cannot tell us how many of them will actually reach blastocyst stage. AI is going to come into this sphere, and there is a lot of work going on into this. How AI is working, whether it is sperms, whether it is eggs, or whether it is embryos. Everyone, millions of data is being put up into these supercomputers. These pictures are being stored, and from there algorithms are being developed. I will show you one such algorithm that we are using in our clinic, wherein simply putting the oocyte pictures into the algorithm will give you an answer as to how is this oocyte going to behave over the next couple of days of culture. AI for sperm selection and semen analysis. Again, imagine when you send your semen analysis to a laboratory, I'm sure you still get morphology of 60%, 70%, 80%. Although WHO has clearly said that anything more than 4% is probably God. In our lab, in an infertility center, the morphology that we get is 1, 2, 3 and 4%. So how is it that the pathology labs give you a morphology of 70, 80%? That is because these tests are not yet standardized, and there is a lot of human error which is coming in. How would it be if we brought in artificial intelligence and then had the artificial intelligence do all this testing? It is today possible. CASA came in many, many years ago. CASA was a very bulky system, very expensive system, and except the CASA, which is probably worth 45 maybe lakh rupees, the morphology part still had to be done manually. The count and motility was being done by these computers per se. But today at Renew Healthcare we have this system which is small, so small that some patients who are not able to collect a semen sample in our clinic, we can actually send the system to their house. and they're able to collect a semen sample in the comfort of their home. And this semen analysis takes exactly 15 minutes. I'm sure all of you have heard of Dr. Ashok Rattan from Cleveland Clinic. He is a renowned figure, a father figure in the world of andrology across the world. Dr. Ashok Rattan is the developer of this system, and he's published multiple papers wherein it's shown that between analysis done manually as per WHO in the best possible IVF lab and done by this machine is absolutely concordant. Not only that, we are also able to actually give a video of the semen sample on WhatsApp to the patient. I know the patient is not going to understand any of it, but sometimes it becomes easier for us to make them understand that the count is actually low, or the morphology is bad, or the motility is bad when they have a copy of that video in their arm, in their hands, or in their mobile phones. AI for male infertility. As I said, when you do a microtessay, imagine going through all those small little tissue samples to get those 1, 2, 3 or 4 sperms. How would it be if AI came into this picture and through artificial intelligence we could actually accurately pick up those sperms? How would it be if through artificial intelligence we could tell a male that what is his chance of male infertility in the future? If he has azoospermia, what is the possibility of retrieval of his own sperms through any of these procedures? AI for embryo evaluation and selection. We already have time-lapse systems, but why is time-lapse not there in every IVF lab? A, it is expensive. 2, when we are trying to understand the grading of the embryo, the aneuploidy of the embryo, that is the genetics of the embryo, and also trying to predict which embryo is going to give us an implantation, unfortunately the time-lapse systems of today are failing. Imagine spending 1.5 crores on a system and then still not being able to predict that pregnancy. Embryo grading, embryo selection for implantation. So this is one system that we use in our lab. Of course, for embryo biopsies, the gold standard still is doing the biopsies that we are doing manually and then subjecting them to PGT-A. But sometimes if the embryos are not very good, we cannot subject them to a manual biopsy, or the patient cannot afford a manual biopsy. This system then can be used. How does this work? You take pictures of the embryo and it's uploaded into a central system which exists all around the world. And the picture of your embryo is compared to those millions of embryos across the world. And then they give you a score, telling you the implantation potential of each embryo. And thus, you can decide and you can discuss with the patient which particular embryo, which has the highest score, would be good for a transplant. AI for prediction of IVF outcomes. Even today, if you go online and you search for IVF algorithm, you will get multiple such algorithms. But if you go to 3, you will find all 3 of them give you different percentages. All 3 of them developed by different IVF centers. I wish we had an algorithm, people are working towards it, wherein when the first time the patient comes and sits into your clinic, you feed their data of age, number of years of infertility, the AMH semen analysis report, whether they have PCO or endometriosis, and the indication for doing the IVF. And then you would have a percentage, would be as accurate as what the patient would achieve at the end when they would walk out of your clinic with a healthy baby. AI for uterus. This is one frontier which we've not yet been able to reach. We've looked at egg quality, sperm quality, we're doing a whole lot of things. But we do the hysteroscopy and look at the cavity. Again, then we still keep fighting and saying, do we need to do a septum resection? Do all polyps need to be removed? Does tuberculosis need to be diagnosed? We can do an ultrasound and look at adenomyosis. Yet we know that the worst adenomyosis sometimes gives you a pregnancy in one attempt. Yet the simplest of endometriosis, a uterus which looks absolutely normal, does not give you a pregnancy. How would it be if you could feed all the ultrasound pictures into a computer, all the hysteroscopic videos into a picture, and then that algorithm could tell us that this uterus has this particular problem. This patient might require a surrogacy. This patient could probably do very well with this kind of a therapy. That AI is what we are looking at, and that AI is not very far away. There are some absolute uterine infertility cases like Mayer-Rokitansky-Kuznhauser syndrome, a woman who's undergone a hysterectomy, or a woman whose uterus is so damaged because of tuberculosis or a previous surgery that she cannot conceive on her own. And for whatever reason, the government says, I'm sorry, you cannot avail of surrogacy. Surrogacy, other than a few countries across the world, is not available anywhere. Can we have an artificial womb? As we speak, these experiments are already on. In the animal world, lamb and other animals have been put into these bags, connected to various machines, and artificially their life has been carried on for a very long time. Is it possible in humans? Has it been tried in humans? Doctors in Netherlands are already working on keeping at least premature babies in this kind of a setup, wherein the baby is put into a specialized bag. If you go online and just search this, you'll get some beautiful videos. There are videos from BBC, etc. They put these babies into these bags, put some fluid around them. There is actually an umbilical cord, there is an artificial placenta, and they're keeping these babies for weeks together. We know premature delivery is a reality. We know that we don't have very good treatments for premature babies. A lot of these babies don't do very well. If you look at Barker's hypothesis, these premature babies are not going to do very well later on in their lives. What if we had an artificial uterus and we could put these babies into this artificial uterus, give them that extra 4, 5, 6 or 8 weeks for them to become more healthy and strong? This is about premature babies. But is it possible to have an absolutely artificial uterus wherein we could put an embryo inside and take out the baby after 9 months? So work on complete ectogenesis, that is an artificial uterus, started way back in 2002. And they actually created an artificial uterus, put an embryo inside, and actually managed a pregnancy also. But again, government regulations, due to legislation prohibiting keeping the human embryo in artificial wombs for longer than 14 days was prohibited. The experiments were stopped in only 6 days. In 12 nations, this rule has been formalized. Even when IVF was started, one of the reasons why Edward and Steptoe managed to do it is because England allowed IVF. On the same hand, in US, some of them, when they managed to get a pregnancy, when they managed to start doing IVF work, they were put behind bars. So probably we are in a world today where some of them are experimenting, maybe even becoming successful, but we are scared of the unknown, and that is why we are putting a stop to them. Maybe 2 years, maybe 5, maybe 10 years, but I'm sure a solution is going to be found. AI in incubators. So this is an incubator which we've gifted ourselves at 1 year at Renew Healthcare. This is absolutely the cutting edge technology, the latest in incubators anywhere in the world. If you wish to know more about it, I'm sorry I'm not the right person, Saroj is there, you can direct your questions to her. But this incubator is entirely based on artificial intelligence, and it kind of looks at all the embryos and adjusts the humidification and the triple gas and everything else that needs to be done to grow the most beautiful of embryos. And this is what we gifted ourselves some short while ago. I had also spoken about an error-free clinic, and I did mention a double witnessing system. This is again something that we've gifted ourselves, although thankfully in all these 21 years of working, we've not had an error in our lab because of the standard operating procedures that we've put in. But volumes grow and there is always a margin for error, which is why we've now put in an RFID tags into our culture systems, wherein every single embryo which goes into freezing is tagged, so that there is absolutely no possibility of one embryo from one person ever going to another. Omics in embryo selection. Again, AI coming in. How is it possible that we could take not a biopsy from the embryo, but the fluid in which the embryo is kept, so we don't damage the embryo, and that fluid being tested could tell us about aneuploidies, could tell us about the implantation potential of the embryo. Could be, instead of taking a scratch from the endometrium, take simple fluid from the endometrium, send it for testing, and find out exactly when to transfer the embryo, what medicines to give, so that each embryo, when put in, would get implanted. That is still happening around the world, and I'm sure in the next couple of years, will have the answers. Robotics in IVF and ICSI. One of the biggest challenges in an IVF center, because we believe that embryologists are not only the backbone, but I think every single bone in an IVF center. They are the heart of an IVF center. But ask any owner of an IVF center and the biggest trouble they will have is from the embryologists. They're not well trained. They're not always committed to one center. They're probably going to 5 different centers. Keeping an embryologist with you is one of the biggest tasks. And then to have the embryologist working sincerely, because you need to give really your heart and soul to these embryos to get the best out of them. I, in my career, at the very beginning, realized that if I have to do an IVF, embryology is going to be a task. So I decided to marry one, so that if she leaves me, I get a new wife and a new embryologist as well. Thankfully, she has not found reasons to change her IVF specialist, nor her husband. So as of now, I don't need robotics in my lab, but robotics is coming. Probably again to standardize procedures across the world, to probably bring about better fertilizations with lesser injury to the oocytes. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, Saroj again would be able to answer, but robotics is already being sold across the world for IVF and ICSI. Again, this is something very interesting that I just saw one article wherein they're actually implanting the embryo inside the myometrium, which the embryo, what we do normally is just put the embryo into the uterus. It normally attaches and then implants. What they are trying to do is make the embryo burrow into the myometrium or the deeper layers of the endometrium, so that it starts to grow from there. CRISPR, gene editing. We've all heard of gene editing. Now, when again an interesting story, when gene editing first started, the man who started gene editing, why did he do it? There was a couple, when the man had HIV, they wanted to have a child. So they came to this man and this man said, I will give you a child who will never be affected by HIV. I will edit his gene wherein he will become immune to HIV. And he actually managed to do that. Unfortunately, he was put behind bars for putting a very successful experiment together. Treating genetic disorders by genomic editing. Again, I'm not the expert for this, Dipanjana is, but why, when I asked her today, Dipanjana, could you name a few diseases by which gene editing is being done? So she said the SMA, or spinal muscular dystrophy, and Duchenne muscular dystrophy is being treated. And then she also went on to add that the first medicine, I'm sorry I can't pronounce the name, costs 16 crores. And the next one costs 2 crores. And I'm sure all of you will then say that I would rather than die than spend 16 crores getting this treatment done. The good part is they are doing it absolutely free. How it's being done free? Again, don't ask me. If you have questions, Dipanjana would be the right person to, and she's part of this program. And they are, even as we speak, doing this treatment free of cost. So gene editing, designer babies. Why are we scared of designer babies? A child comes from the genetic material of the mother and the father. Yet, the child may possess absolutely different characteristics. He may have different mannerisms, different likes, different dislikes. So just because the genes are there, does not mean the likes and dislikes will also be there. So when you edit a small part of their gene to make them maybe HIV immune, we don't know what is it that we're editing inside them. What does the future hold? What are we making a change in that one good may also bring the bad? We may have certain stores like this in the what we want. Fantastic. You have a choice. If the science is available and you have the money, why not? But then, what they don't do is the fine print here that the tech tycoon could be a pedophile. The golden athlete could be a shoplifter. The musical genius could be a murderer. Now, which one are you going to choose? Because what you see is what you're being shown. What is going to happen after that is something we still don't know. Cloning, the next interesting thing. We all know about Dolly, and I will just take 2 more minutes. It would be so nice if we never had to lose a loved one. We could simply just clone them and have them there with us. Disrupt nature, and you don't know what you're going to get. Even if we did manage this, this is the favorable, the nice side of it. But with the good, there will always be bad. And we already have scientists cloning dinosaurs. How do we even know that there isn't already a Jurassic Park hidden somewhere in this world for being unleashed on us, maybe in the years to come, when they can't contain these dinosaurs? And remember what I said at the beginning, everything that you've ever dreamt of sometimes comes true. And there was a very nice movie, Back to the Future. So these are all now coming true. A very nice slide telling us how automation could work in IVF, wherein from patient workup, from telemedicine, AI deciding what protocol, what dosage, long protocol, short protocol, then deciding the stimulation protocol, explaining to the patient how the patient can take the injections at home by themselves, the robot doing the transvaginal extraction, then robot doing the whatever procedures are required, IVF in the lab, the robot doing the embryo transfer after selecting the best possible embryo and transferring it at the best possible time. This is a beautiful movie for anyone who would like to see. This beautiful lady sitting here and talking to this man in a restaurant is artificial intelligence. She does not exist. And that is what this movie is all about. This is what the future may be all about if we allow cloning and gene editing to happen in our lives. Most of us, I think all of us, have grown up in this era where we've played out in the childhood, we've dirtied our hands and feet, and we've spoken to friends, we've chatted with friends, we've read books, and when we look back, we say, those days were the best days. What are these youngsters doing today? Yes, there is a problem with mobile phones and social media, but they've also brought a lot of good to us. So in the end, it's also true that if you don't grow and move with times, you definitely are going to be left behind. Let's hope the future is something we can look forward to and not the life on Mars that Elon Musk seems to promise. Thank you so much for a patient hearing.
Rajiv, thank you very much for your excellent dedication. First of all, my apology that I was a bit late, so I really couldn't pick up with all the things. Let me tell you, I can remember one picture, and that picture was taken by a very famous French photographer, Cartier. In that picture, it was a two-part of it. One about India. Part of rocket was being transported by a bullock cart. On the other hand, after that, that rocket could go up and really achieve something. If you want, I can give you the details. Basically, the philosophy is what you have said today, that the future, the genomics, the prospect of IVF and everything. Let's dream. If we cannot dream, we really cannot achieve anything. But before that, if everybody kindly allows me, first of all, I really do not claim myself as an infertility specialist. But while working in Liverpool, my consultant was, he wanted to make me interested in infertility. I got little bit interested. Whatever. That's a beside the story. What I would like to emphasize is that in our practice, say in Calcutta or periphery or whatever, we have got three main problems. First, semen, husband, intercourse and things. Second, uterus, tubes. Third, ovulation. And most of the problems, I suppose, can be dealt with good results. But at the end of the day, there remains few cases where we really do not know what to do. I am not talking about economics because that's a problem. I am not talking about the scope of health services. Problem is there. I am not talking about my ability or most of the gynaecologist's ability to service that. But at the end of the day, maybe we are still in a situation to address the basic things. But at the same time, what I must raise that we should not be forgetting the future, maybe from F16 to F18 or whatever. And what we have expressed today, really very good. And why don't we just go ahead thinking about it, dreaming about it, and achieving about it, isn't it? Thank you very much.
Dr. Rajiv Agrawal, this whole presentation as a renowned infertility specialist as well as medical director, you have covered and restricted yourself to the IVF management, not only in your clinic, throughout the world. However, I will take some few minutes to allow your speech. Say, the infertile couple, there are millions of infertile couples, particularly in the urban India, who are physically and medically not able even to carry the pregnancy up to term, and also undesirable to carry this pregnancy to the term. And there remains the only option is surrogacy. So you have not uttered anything about the surrogacy, because we know ART is a collective term. It includes the IVF, HC, and surrogacy is new. And why surrogacy? It is what is not possible by doing the IVF or HC. You have to go for surrogacy. So till now, all over the world, the surrogacy practiced in two ways: traditional and gestational. And again, that also has the two ways. One commercial type, that is paid, and other one is a altruistic, that is unpaid. So here I am gradually going to you to take the answer from you. The government of India, in India it is legalized first in 2002. The surrogacy was reported from the Chennai, first report. And after that, due to misuse of this technique, this procedure, India becomes the hub of this surrogacy. The foreigners used to come, and with the cheaper rate they can fulfill their idea of infertility. The thing is, right from 2002, and gradually, there is a modification, upgradation of this bill to make it legalized. So lastly, at 2018, till that time, the commercial surrogacy was allowed. Only thing, the foreigners were not allowed to come in India. Okay? And after that, again, the last current 2019 bill, amendment bill, it is not legalized now. It's not gone to Lok Sabha and waiting in the permission of the Rajya Sabha and waiting for the presidents. So it is not a skill. 2019, I am focusing on that. they have banned the commercial service. But they have focused only on the active stage, unpaid service. So here is a fallacy. Fallacy is what? Unpaid means provision of this law is in married, not a married infertile couple of 5 years of infertility, and they can get this facility through the servant. They can choose the servant mother in close relatives. And this is also very close relative means what? Of couple, whatever it be. But thing is, in Indian scenario, in urban, family are nuclear family. So relationship with the sister is least good relation. The sister and sister-in-law is not that. Rather, the old people in the family, they will shock how the sister can be the mother of the brother's baby. How the sister-in-law can be the mother of a brother-in-law baby. So there is a legal fallacy. So how can you find? So because it's social stigma, they cannot discuss in openly what to do. And moreover, the other part, they are not allowing the single mother. Now, and we live in relationship. There are a good number of people having given it. So,
all filed a petition.
But in IVF, it is a single mother or live-in relationship, but not in services. So, how they will solve their problem?
We all filed a petition. We are doing services.
So now,
we are doing services right now. It's not that we are not doing services.
I am not asking solve because there has been modification of right 2008 to 2009. So we are still waiting for modification. If you suggest from the renowned, it comes on renowned committee. So what is the way?
Yeah, you are completely right. Actually, surrogacy, he is very right actually. Surrogacy should be taken into consideration because that not only serves the social side of it, but at the same time, and another thing in the respect of surrogacy, adoption should be also one of the important things to consider about. But the thing is, rules and regulations, politics, science, it's very difficult to match all three things in a country like India. So that's it.
Success rate is quite high.
Okay.
Where in your IPL, 40 to 50% highest, but here is 90% maybe services. So why we should think more about this?
Sir, let's have a detailed discussion. Goes to felicitate and Dr. Ruby Yadav to felicitate Dr. Rajiv. Advocate Bajpai, country's leading authority on medical laws, is a practicing counsel of the Supreme Court. He is the author of Law of Criminal Liability and Medical Negligence, which is currently the only published work on this subject in India. To chair the session, can I have Professor Sudeep Kumar Shah, Head of Department, Calcutta Medical College and Hospital, Professor Subhash Chandra Biswas, Head of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, IPGME and R, and Dr. Binita Sahe, one of the senior most practitioners of Jamshedpur. Can we please have you on the stage to chair the session? Welcome to Advocate Bajpai to please start his speech.
Dear Dr. Friends, very good evening. One preliminary clarification. I am a poor advocate. I am not a thought leader. I am not a lawmaker. Whatever is there in the law, I will speak. Whatever changes are required, that I leave it to other learned dignitaries. Secondly, I really want to thank my hosts for permitting me to stand outside for an hour. This talk was scheduled at 8. And as a speaker, I was again and again coerced to come and sit with all of you. So I requested Shaugat, bhai, please, what will I do inside? It's a professional hazard for lawyers like me. Sit inside for 30 minutes before the session, 15 minutes out after the session, and listen to medicine. So I really want to thank him. I was permitted to stand outside. Friends, every profession has an hazard. As a lawyer who specializes in medical negligence, this is my hazard. How much time do I have? Anyone?
Sir, as much time as you want, sir.
No, people will be feeling hungry. They should not curse me. That's the whole point.
But everyone is here to listen to you, sir.
Thank you. So friends, every profession has an hazard. I have to listen to medicine whether I like it or I don't like it. And doctors will have to learn law, whether you like it, whether you don't like it. Your precious time, energy that you should have been putting to learn something more about medicine, you are forced to put it in listening to an advocate. Unfortunate, unavoidable, sorry. So friends, I practice as a counsel, and as a counsel I am briefed by lawyers. So today Mr. Agarwal's brief to me is very clear. There are some infertility consultants and there are some gynecologists. And there are some gynecologists waiting to become infertility consultants. So this talk is in two parts. In the first part we will talk something general, applicable to all specialties, to all doctors. And in the second part I will try to brief all of you about the recent changes that have happened, landmark changes that have happened in infertility laws. And if time permits, I'll be taking your questions. After all, I am here in this hotel only till tomorrow morning, so we can take as many questions as time permits. So friends, very elementary aspect. Why should a doctor know law in the first place? First reason, and it happened in your city. A hospital was directed by the Honorable Supreme Court of India to pay around 12 crores as compensation. Financial trouble. Yes, this is a reason why doctors must know law. Another reason, in 2017, Indian Medical Association, the national body, they carried out a nationwide survey. About 33,000 doctors were interviewed. And the report was mind-boggling. 82.7% doctors in this country, they fear violence, they fear legal problems, they are under stress. The Hindu, in fact, carried a very apt headline, "Healers turn sufferers." why every doctor should know law. The first one obviously is to protect your hard-earned money. 12 crore is a big amount. And fortunately, it was no Ambani or Adani or Birlas who was on the other side of MRI hospital. Otherwise, I don't know what would have been the compensation. An individual doctor practicing, how many years will it take to earn and 12 crores rupees? It's a big amount. A short way to become bankrupt. But friends, this is a small reason why you should know law. You have great professional indemnities. You can take any one of them. Second big reason. Not only doctors, every professional, he or she builds his or her career, professional career, step by step, brick by brick. It takes a long time to build your professional career, to build your reputation. And one incident, it's enough. Media, social media, the poor patient, the rogue doctor, it makes a good story. No one cares what impact it will have on the healthcare sector, but it is a good story. The reputation, the standing that you have made so painstakingly, one incident is enough. And you all must have experienced it. This is a bigger reason why you should know. But there is a bigger reason, the biggest reason why you should know. Have you ever wanted or failed to act in a way that has caused harm, injury, death of the patient, or had the potential of causing death, harm, injury to the patient? That is why doctors are. And friends, this must be the biggest reason why you should know law. Why you should be aware of law, why you should keep yourself updated about law. Your patient safety. Someone who has entrusted his life and limb to you. So friends, some legal trends, recent ones that we have observed in the last few years, and the source of all this information happens to be the judgments, reported judgments pronounced by higher courts in India. COVID cases, COVID is now out, but friends, there is no cause to worry as far as law is concerned. All across the country, wherever patients' relatives, they are filing case against doctors for something that has been done, something that has not been done, while taking care of COVID patients or even non-COVID patients. Courts are far too accommodative. Every other day you get a judgment where a learned judge appreciates the doctors for the sacrifice that they have done during COVID. Nothing to worry. Yes, after the Kolkata case, that 12 crore compensation, courts are giving bigger compensation. Earlier, when I used to get an order of 10 lakh rupees compensation from the court, my lawyer friends used to come asking for a party. Arey, you got 10 lakh rupees. And not far back, friends, 7-8 years back. Today, every other case, 50 lakh, 70 lakh, this is the compensation that is being granted. Another factual aspect, gynecology as a specialty happens to be high risk specialty. Not only in India, all over the world. And infertility as a specialty, whenever something goes wrong, the amount of compensation that is usually granted happens to be big. On top of it, friends, there is something known as limitation. The period that law provides for someone who has been wronged to go before the court. It is usually 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. But in case of gynecologists as well as infertility consultants, the patient, in fact here it would be the newborn, the infant, he or she can sue the doctor, and the period here is 21 years, 21 long years. So what should be done? Two very pragmatic legal precautions. Those of you who are running hospitals, maternity homes, nursing homes, please ensure that you make a private limited company, it's very easy to make, or a public limited company, or a limited liability partnership, LLP. Your personal liability gets restricted. Whatever are the assets of the corporate structure, that will be taken. If at all the hospital has to pay a big amount as compensation. We still have doctors running small nursing homes and hospitals on their own names. It's better to come to a corporate structure. Number two, please take indemnity, and that too of an appropriate amount. One mistake that we are observing is that while taking insurance, you don't read what is there between the lines. Either the hospital has taken insurance or the doctor has taken insurance. Friends, there is something known as individual negligence, there is something known as institutional negligence or administrative negligence. For individual negligence, it is the doctor who would be responsible, liable to pay compensation. For institutional negligence, it is the hospital who has to pay compensation. And friends, trust me, every month we have 1 or 2 cases where the court has held the doctor negligent. Unfortunately, the doctor said, I have not taken insurance, it was my hospital that has taken. And once you read those insurance documents, you come to a conclusion that it was only the hospital that was insured, not the individual liability of doctors. So while taking insurance, be careful. This is something really troubling. And this is not restricted only to gynecologists. Post-surgery care, friends, is an integral part of a surgeon's duty. You don't do it, you don't provide appropriate post-surgery care, you are negligent in the eyes of law. You cannot stand in the court to say, look, I had a conference to attend. I had a CME to attend. Especially elective surgeries. And we are observing this day in, day out. Patient admitted, patient taken for an elective surgery, and post-surgery the surgeon is not there. So friends, please understand, this is not only your ethical, moral duty, but it's also a legal duty that you have to provide post-surgery care. failure to do so is obviously negligence. There are exceptions. 2 exceptions. Number 1, you have an emergency. After performing this surgery, you have an emergency, a personal emergency. You have all the rights to attend to that personal emergency, but you have to appoint an appropriate locum, an appropriate substitute. Inform the patient, I have to leave for so and so thing. This is an experienced doctor, I am leaving you under his or her care. Appropriate documentation obviously is required. The second exception happens to be a patient comes who needs emergency care. Very common for obstetricians. You have taken care of a patient, or rather, you have taken care, you have gone an emergency, the patient goes to another doctor. And the other doctor already has something fixed. He can perform the surgery, but he is not available for post-surgery care. Please go ahead, perform the surgery, but do inform the patients and the attendants. I will perform this surgery, post-surgery care, I am not there. If this is okay with you, fair enough. We go ahead. Otherwise, I am not going to perform this surgery. Please record this aspect very specifically in consent. That the patient, the attendants were informed that you will not be taking care of post-surgery care. Enough to protect you. Investigations are somehow turning out to be really problematic for doctors. Some deeper study certainly is required, but there are 2 aspects that I will share with you that is causing maximum harm to the doctors today. In fact, in the last 3 years, we have seen great rise. Number 1, you advise investigations generally on another piece of paper, you don't advise it on the prescription. In fact, in infertility also you have those tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, get it done, 6th one you don't have to do. Patient takes that investigation advice, gets the investigation done. But in the court of law, the patient is only going to produce the prescription. And I am yet to see a patient who comes in the court and says, no, the doctor had given me an advice which I gave to the lab and the lab has kept it. Doctor did not advise any investigations. What needs to be done? You can carry on with your work of giving that slip which you tear off and give to the patient. But the fact that you have advised the investigation needs to be recorded in your prescription, in your OPD papers, in your ANC papers. You have to write it down. I have advised so and so investigations. Mischief is happening from all sides, friends. And it is happening in court of law also. So when you advise, please record it that you have advised certain investigations. Next, you have advised investigation, the report comes to you. If everything is normal, the majority of the doctors don't write anything. It was normal. What happens in the court of law? The court puts a question to the doctor. Look, this patient was coming to you for antenatal care. Day 1, day 30, day 60, day 90. You advised investigation on day 30. But after that, you have not bothered to check what was the report. The fact happens, you have checked the report. report, everything was normal. But then there is another fact also, you forgot to write it on the prescription that you wrote on day 60. So friends, the fact that you have perused those reports, you have seen those reports, should be recorded somewhere in the prescription. Last, when you hand over the investigation reports, when you hand over the scans, films to the patients, do record it at least in the discharge card. All investigations, if you can write down 10 reports and 5 scans and 10 investigation reports have been handed over, fantastic. If you cannot, at least write down one simple line. All investigation reports, records, ECGs handed over to the patient. What happens in the court again is that the patient says all the reports are already there with the hospital, they gave me nothing. This one line is enough to protect you. Second big mistake that doctors do. You advise the patient to get a sonography done, most common. After that there is something abnormal, you want the patient to do a CT scan. Patient is not financially well off. Patient does not disclose this to you. He comes on the next day, oh doctor, I forgot, next time. Fair enough. Next time he comes and he says, sir, your advice that you had written that chit, I have misplaced it somewhere. You write another chit and you give it. When the patient comes for the third time, he says, let me share with you the truth, doctor. I don't have money to do CT scan. Oh my goodness. Fair enough, you carry on with the treatment with whatever best you can do. Something unfortunate happens and this patient goes to the court. Now the court again puts a question to you, doctor, you had advised investigation on day 1. And friends, I am just not taking hypothetical situations. There are reported cases from India, n numbers. This is what has happened. Doctors are taking defense. The patient was not well to do. He told me orally he cannot do so and so investigation. Please record it. Because that investigation was medically indicated. You were bound to. You have not. Where is the justification? It has to be in black and white. Patients have done some mistake. They have not followed what you have advised them. What do you do? Nothing. Patients fight with you, they insist. No doctor, don't do this, don't do this. In fact, even in the Kolkata case, 12 crore rupees case, one of the best defenses that could have helped the Kolkata hospital was that the husband of the deceased patient, who was a doctor, was interfering with the treatment. Unfortunately, nowhere it was recorded. And if you get an opportunity, please go through the judgment passed by the Honorable Supreme Court. Comparison is drawn between the Bombay hospital where the patient died, where Dr. Farooq Udwadia clearly recorded everything. Patient and his elder brother, who is a surgeon, they are interfering with the course of treatment. I am not permitting them to do this, I am permitting them to do this. Kolkata hospital did not record anything. Results are there, friends. So mistakes, errors, denials, refusal, insistence, request, threat, one single line is all that is required from your side. This is something really amazing. If your patient happens to be a doctor, the possibility of that patient going to the court is at least 2.5 times more. We are still doing some research. In all possibility, this would be greater than 2.5. And it's not only that the patient happens to be a doctor. If the very near relatives of the patient, siblings, parents, children, if they are doctors, be cautious. And you, doctors, still have that peer-to-peer attraction, that's very good, very fine. But just don't put your shields down. All that is required, especially on the procedural aspect, please follow it. Thought leaders obviously must contemplate where is the mistake. Serious contemplation is required. What is wrong? Doctors are suing doctors. Friends, as far as medical negligence is concerned, there are two giant killers. In fact, 2/3 problems that are faced by Indian doctors, they can be attributed to improper consent and improper documentation. I am very happy with this statistics. Because as a student of comparative law, when I compare it with the allegations that are made in other countries, I find that there the patients are attacking the core expertise of the doctor. Doctor, you have failed to diagnose me. Doctor, you gave me a wrong drug. It was not indicated. And what are the patients alleging here? Discharge card not given. I applied for medical records, it was given after 15 days. Consent form, the doctor's name is not written. Procedural aspect, friends. Please understand, you are practicing in 2022. It was your teachers who were practicing in 1980. Tectonic shift has happened. Take efforts to keep yourself updated, to be aware of the laws, the legally correct procedures. And trust me, 2/3 of your problems are gone. As far as patient's consent is concerned, there is a website, patientsconsent.com. Every year a SOP on patient's consent is made. Institute of Medicine and Law obviously happens to be the facilitator. But nearly all the big national medical associations, they appoint someone from their executive committee or managing committee. And we are coming out with this SOP for the last 10 years, absolutely free of cost for everyone. Every year, please go download this SOP, read it once. This is the minimum that you can do to update yourself, at least on consent. So friends, with that we come to the second part. Recent developments in art and surrogacy. Anyone feeling hungry? Little bit. 10 minutes. Another 10 minutes will do. Chalo, there is no, so I take it as a yes. Fair, friends. For the first time, friends, in this country, law has been made on art and surrogacy. 2005 guidelines, yes, they were statutes. As a lawyer, if you ask me, yes, they were statutes. They come within the statutory framework because the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare that had notified that piece of law. But now the Parliament has made a law. The Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Act 2021 and the Surrogacy Regulation Act 2021. Friends, these are not bills. These are laws. You are bound to follow that. Every citizen of this country is bound to follow this law. And if you don't follow, there are consequences. We will discuss it. And friends, the government seems to be serious as far as infertility is concerned. In fact, when the law came, I am on record to say that it will take at least 1.5 years to put the paraphernalia in place. All that was done. Within a month, the act was brought into force and the authorities today are there. Good, bad, ugly, that may be another point. And in June, both under the Art Act as well as under the Surrogacy Act, rules have been notified. Now, these 4 pieces of law, they form the statutory framework. Everyone who wants to practice infertility, everyone who is practicing infertility, please read these 4 laws at least once. Do's and don'ts are very clear. Even the Supreme Court of India cannot give a judgment against these laws. They will first have to strike down a particular provision if they are not comfortable with it, or otherwise they will follow it. Very sacred, everyone has to know that. So friends, surrogacy is virtually banned, practically banned. The provisions which are there to ensure that surrogacy practice happens very less. And art as a specialty has been highly regulated. Commercial transactions, sale, purchase, completely banned. Whether it is a surrogate mother, whether it is gametes, zygotes or embryos. No commerce involved. Very fundamental aspect. For surrogacy, the couple must have medical indications. And there is a board, there is an authority, and there is a magistrate, all sort of people who are going to certify it. That the couple has medical indications to go in for surrogacy, otherwise not permitted. As far as art is concerned, couples who are unable to conceive for 1 year, proving cohabitation is very tough job. If they are married, they have a marriage certificate, it is presumed. They are permitted to opt for art. Donors of gametes, they are going to be linked with Aadhaar. Surrogate mother, she must have a child of her own, and this surrogate mother can act as a surrogate only once. Insurance is mandatory for the oocyte donor, for the surrogate mother. There are many aspects which need clarifications. The insurance amount must cover all complications. How is it possible? But that is what the rules are saying. Again, as far as art is concerned, very interesting aspect has been introduced. You have to give a discharge certificate. These are basically OPD procedures. When do you give a discharge certificate? For every cycle? Or you give a discharge certificate when the patient says, no doctor, from tomorrow onwards I am not going to come here. Now I will go to another doctor. But you have to give discharge certificate. And unfortunately, discharge certificate, although it is there in the Act, we had expected something more to come in the rules. There is absolutely nothing. live-in relationships, unmarried, divorced men, they are discriminated here. Women still have some chance. Director in charge of the clinic. It can be a doctor, it can be a manager, someone who has done management studies. And this person happens to be personally liable. There is a legal presumption that whatever wrong has happened, the director or in charge of the clinic will be personally held liable. Criminal liability has been imposed. And it is no ordinary criminal liability. Maximum imprisonment is 10 years. Fine is 25 lakhs. Some of the offences are non-bailable. You won't get bail. If the police does not if the police files a charge sheet within 90 days, you will not get bail. It's a non-bailable offence. And it is non-compoundable also. What it means, once the FIR has been filed, it has to be taken to its logical conclusion. The authority or if the patient has complained, the patient and the doctors, if they come together, try to compromise, not possible. The short point is, what we can decipher is that the policymakers are really serious. They want strict discipline as far as this specialty of medicine goes. So friends, infertility practice will never be the same in India again. It will be regulated more than any other medical specialty. Speak. We try to create awareness. We try to inform doctors that look, you have a very valuable right. You don't know it, it's a different ball game. Way back in 2005, the Supreme Court of India has protected you in criminal medical negligence cases. If a police complaint has been filed, the policeman has to get an expert opinion. After that only he can proceed against the doctor. The Supreme Court has said don't arrest doctors in a routine manner. Even when the patient files a complaint in a criminal court, the patient has to get a legal opinion. A medical opinion. You have enough time to explore legal remedies. You are more protected in India than a member of parliament. Trust me. The maximum protection that a member of parliament in India has got is 4 days from arrest, not more than that. And the minimum protection that a doctor has got is more than 4 months. A mayor died. Mayor was from the ruling party. Case was filed against the doctor, a criminal case. Police took 4 months, 4 big months to get a medical opinion. By that time, the doctor has got all bail and anticipatory bails. So friends, there is a Dr. Archana Sharma Med Legal Help Desk. If you need legal aid and advice on criminal medical negligence, obviously you can get in touch with them. Doctors who want to spread this knowledge amongst others, they can also get in touch with this help desk, as well as any medical society or group of doctors that wants to hold a webinar on this particular aspect can get in touch with us. Friends, thank you for listening patiently.
Thank you Mr. Basti.
The team review for giving us this opportunity, Dr. Rajiv and Madam Saroj and the whole team. And the two messages you have given, the giant killer of the doctor is the improper consent and improper documentation. That was very good. So we should be careful about the public, about the police, about the prosecutor or politician also. Thank you so much.
Sir, I have two questions for you. You mentioned that for post-operative care, for any reason, if we are not available, we have to inform. Now, say for example, tomorrow I am traveling for a holiday. For a holiday. I have informed the patient beforehand, I am going to operate today. My team is going to look after you from tomorrow, and I am going to be on a holiday. The patient develops fever or whatever after that, the team looks after. Am I still liable? There was no emergency at that point.
So, you recorded it with consent. You are 100% safe. I have informed you, I won't be there. You still want me to carry out that procedure? I will do it. No problem.
It has to be recorded with the consent.
Absolutely consent. Because it's an elective surgery. Number two, you already knew that you won't be available. So, you have to inform it and get consent.
You also mentioned about the patient not bringing in, say for example, the investigation sheets, etc. It is possible that the patient does not bring the prescription also, and most of us, a lot of us, don't keep records of prescriptions. So then it is our word against them. So does it mean that I never gave a prescription in the first place?
So, Dr. Rajiv, what we advise is either to write prescriptions in continuity, one below the other and so on, so that there is no chance of mistake. See, this has been done. You give 10 prescriptions, you just tear off your letter pad and you give it. You have no records, he has all the records. And then his lawyers choose prescription 1, 3, 5, 7. You are in a problem. In prescription, although you have written, I have perused the investigation reports. The problem here would be, he is not writing it in court and you don't have a Xerox copy or anything else. So, at least you can number the prescriptions. At least for obstetricians where patients come for ANC, prescriptions can be numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, something like this.
Thank you.
Hello. Sorry, there is a question actually. Do you have any time? No.
No, I actually have another lecture, so can we just have it while dinner?
There is no question actually. Yeah, actually, I had to come across a situation where I had to do a cesarean section. Okay? And at the time of doing cesarean section, because of whatever reason, it was almost in a situation where I had to perform or was about to do a cesarean hysterectomy. But the consent for hysterectomy was not taken because it was not really needed at the time of operation or before the operation. So suppose at the time of doing a normal surgery and if a situation arises where I have to do something where the consent has not been taken, but for the saving of the life of the mother or whatever, if I have to perform, why do I stand?
You are completely good. But you will have to demonstrate that it was something where you could not take consent, either the patient was not conscious or the attendants were not there, something like this, and it was an emergency where you had to do it. It's a complete defense in such situation.
Sorry to interrupt.
Now we come to the final presentation of the evening. First trimester screening, current updates by Dr. Sita Ramamurthy.
Congratulations to the entire team and thank you, Chairperson. So I can see there are very few interested audiences here. So I'm just going to quickly throw on what we have about first trimester screening. I know everything, all of this is not very new, but something new has come up which might change our perspective in how we screen for our women who have come through your clinics and become pregnant and now in the first trimester. So that's me for you. We have changed the model of care. It's now no longer the earlier traditional antenatal care. It's now become a pyramid where we concentrate everything in the first trimester, and that becomes a window of opportunity because this is a crucial window where we screen for maternal and fetal problems. Now in maternal problems, we all know we can screen for a lot of conditions, out of which hyperglycemia and hypertensive disorders become the most important. I'll try to make it as quick as possible because I can see the interest, everybody's really hungry. In fetus, you can see for aneuploidy, structural defects, preterm birth, and of course for everything ultrasound is the cornerstone, and without which we can't move forward. So as part of IVF, as part of our routine practice, we do an early ultrasound, but there is actually no reason to offer routine ultrasound to all our women just to confirm that she's pregnant, and that is what the ISWAG Bible says. But nevertheless, if we do it, we can look for certain things like to confirm the intrauterine pregnancy, especially if it's multiple and determine its chorionicity. When we talk about the late first trimester ultrasound, we screen for aneuploidy, structural defects, neural tube defects, preeclampsia, fetal growth restriction, and even preterm birth, and different variables have different sensitivities. So when you screen for aneuploidy, obviously it's routinely done for all women, and also when there's the condition, there's a possible heritable condition, when there's a predisposed baby, also if the lady is an advanced age or recurrent pregnancy loss. But you must remember that this aneuploidy, the risk of aneuploidy reduces with gestational age. If a woman walks into your clinic at the age of 40, her risk may be, or 35, her risk may be 1 in 250 at the beginning of pregnancy, and it decreases by the time she reaches 40 weeks. So in your screening, if that fetus or the baby has surpassed 20 weeks, it's unlikely, or the risk of it being affected by aneuploidy is less. You can get that. Now this is a timeline. We've come quite a long way from when we started off, where age was used, and certain factors about multiple of needles where you need to know. And every woman as she walks in has a specific risk that she walks in, that's her O'Reilly risk. And depending on certain findings or certain variables that we can attach to the fetus having a higher risk of Down syndrome, that becomes a likelihood ratio. So every time a test is done, a new O'Reilly risk is formed. I'll just quickly go through these slides where you have the first trimester screening, where double marker is done with PAPE and 3-beta-HCG, and an enhanced FTS where you can add on variables like alpha-fetoprotein, which will tell you whether the baby is at risk of growth restriction, or PSGF is also used for screening for preeclampsia. The second trimester has a quadruple test. We no longer use a triple test because any screening test has to have a detection rate of at least 70% or more, which the triple test does not comply to. So we have different models where we have an integrated, contingent and sequential, and out of these, this is the first trimester that we use as using a CRL, NT based, and a PAPE and beta-HCG is the most sensitive that we can offer, and we have other variables like quadruple test and penta test. Now, when we look at the efficacy of these screening methods, as I said, the age and the combined test with the additional markers give a 95% sensitivity to have a 5% false positive results, which means that when I'm talking on the mic, you want to hear the best of what you can hear, but you also want to eliminate all the background noises. But there will be some background noises, and that is what the false positive is all about. So a false positive has to be there for an acceptable high sensitivity. Now you must remember that there are certain factors which affect the first trimester biochemistry, like diabetes will reduce your PAPE, IVF pregnancies will itself reduce your PAPE. So when you look at the reports, you just don't look at the risk, you look at what has caused the increased risk, whether that was the NT, the PAPE or the beta-HCG. Now something that has taken the world altogether by storm, which is the cell-free fetal DNA, which is the concentration of the cell-free of the DNA of the fetus in the maternal blood that can be detected by 10 weeks. And it can screen for fetal trisomies 21, 13 and 18. But what I want to bring about to your notice is that though the detection, the sensitivity for trisomy 21 is very, very good, but it stands at 99.7%, not 100% because it is still a screening test. It performs not so well for the trisomy 18 and 13 and other single gene disorders. So what is to be taken point here is that the entire fetal genome is represented in cell-free DNA, and the genome-wide sequencing methods that have been used, they have allowed the commercial providers to report on a broader range of things that are including the rare aneurysmal triploidies and the copy number variant syndromes. But here what we need to know is that all these syndromes have a low predictive value and therefore their detectable clinical utility is actually reduced. So you have to keep that in mind when you're actually prescribing this test for rare syndromes. But for one thing that has recently come up is that cell-free DNA has improved its sensitivity for 22q11 to deletion. So if you are suspecting, along with the trisomy 21, you can do it for DJOT syndrome and then not for the other. So that is the latest in cell-free DNA, where we don't include all the others, but only 22q11 or the DJOT syndrome. So it is very important to have a pre-test counseling, and it is best validated for trisomy 21, 18 and 13. And information on the other microdeletion syndromes does not still have robust validation, so we still have to wait for that space to emerge. So as I said, as of now in 2022 we have the DJOT syndrome, but unfortunately decisions are being made on the NIPS results for termination. You have to confirm it with invasive testing when the NIPS comes positive, whether this baby is diagnosed with the condition or not. So implications in practice is it can be used as a primary screening, but you cannot forget the first trimester ultrasound scan. And you can have a secondary screening where your conventional screening gives you a high risk. It performs equally well in multiple pregnancies, and even in multiple pregnancies you have to realize that it depends on the chorionicity. So if you have a monochorionic twins, there's a single probability because the genetic material is the same, whereas in dichorionic it will be fetus specific. But a very, very important thing to remember is that to not recommend NIPS when you find a structural defect in the fetus, which we still see clinicians doing it. And even when the risk on FTS, combined FTS is very high, like something more than 1 in 100, you shouldn't be ideally advising in NIPS because that complicates the matter and you're focusing only on Downs, which forms only 10% of your entire genetic problems. So the concerns with NIPS is a misdiagnosis of atypical chromosomal aberrations in the so-called intermediate group by certain labs and the high-risk groups with NIPTs, when NIPT is offered for common trisomies instead of invasive diagnosis with chromosomal microarray analysis. So if offered as first line, genetic conditions other than the common trisomies and fetal structural anomalies will be missed, or they could be delayed as into the second trimester. And it's important to remember that the women who are older than 40 will have a higher chance of Down syndrome, but the woman who is younger than 30 will have a higher chance of these rare genetic syndromes, which is not going to be picked up by NIPS. So we also look at certain soft markers, and this study, and this work has clearly said that if a woman has had an NIPS which is a low risk, we don't look at soft markers, and that has no significance at all. So a so-called genetic sonogram has no value once the NIPS comes as normal. So this is a suggested screening protocol for trisomy 21 in Indian scenario, where she has a high risk, you can repeat the quadruple test, and if that is still at high risk, you can do invasive testing, and if it is a high risk, you would if it's more than 1 in 100, as I said, you would go directly for an invasive, and depending on what has caused the risk, if you want to counsel them regarding NIPS, you can do that. Of course, as I said, you have to do a confirmatory test, and the best way is to do a chromosomal microarray and not restrict to just karyotyping. Next is we screen for fetal anomalies because, just going through these slides, because in anomalies in low risk population you have about 1 in 81, you can detect them, and you can almost detect 100% of Ehrlichia and encephalocele. There are certain conditions which have a 99% detectable rate in different centers, but you have to accept it that all anomalies cannot be picked up in the first trimester. These are a few anomalies that were detected. Regarding preeclampsia, the strategies that have been there for ages is the clinical history, maternal characteristics, and the timeline has showed that we've again come a long way just by screening for maternal risk factors. We have our HTB gestosis score where facilities are not available. We can use this score to screen for women and for preeclampsia. And this is the latest in the risk model assessment, where if you screen using the maternal characteristics, mean arterial pressure and blood for PSGF, you could get a risk for assessment for preeclampsia. And the ASPIRATE trial clearly says that if we screen for women using these factors, and put them on 150 milligram of aspirin, you can prevent early onset preeclampsia. Predicting FGR is still not very good at it, but you can do it because the two are correlated, preeclampsia and FGR. Once you predict preeclampsia, you can predict FGR to some extent. However, cervical screening is not so good in the first trimester. So in the practice bulletin of August 2020 says that screening and diagnostic testing should be discussed and offered to all women. And you must remember that cell-free DNA does not screen for all chromosomal conditions, and irreversible decisions such as pregnancy termination should not be taken solely on cell-free DNA results. Genetic counseling is important always, so we have our friends with us. It's a multidisciplinary approach, and whoever desires more information have to have a proper genetic counseling before you undergo any other test. We have recently, in fact, I just heard Professor Seshaya saying that you can do in the first trimester blood test, HbA1c in the 10 weeks of pregnancy and predict gestational diabetes in these women and use measures. And also you can use first trimester PAPE and tumor necrosis factor to predict GDN. That's the way forward. So the first trimester, ladies and gentlemen, is a crucial window. You have to have a checklist and institutional protocol. All women should be offered screening, and no test is superior. You have to individualize because one no shoe matches another. And but it is important to know that the first trimester scan is mandatory because it has much more to offer than you can actually see. You have to look at the annulates and think beyond Downs and trisomies, and you have to think about what are the ethical issues here so that you can use the right indication of the right patient by the right doctor at the right time, by the right technique. Thank you so much.
Hello. Thank you, Sita, for your wonderful presentation.
It was a very hurried presentation.
Detect very early in pregnancy, something will have to, terminate the pregnancy or not, because people are these days very, very conscious. So regarding your FTS, the actual age, whether it is 12 to 14 weeks or 11 to 13 weeks, is very important because some of the laboratories, they say that after 30 weeks they cannot do it. So the problem is sometimes they will not detect all these things, at the 30 weeks or 12 weeks. So what is your opinion?
So we have our FMF Fetal Medicine Foundation criteria for doing the NT scan. We go by CRM more than the weeks of gestation. So it's 45 to 84 millimeter. So it should be from 11 weeks to 14 plus 1 days. Now it's always better to do the scan between the 12th and the 13th week because we can balance the two. We can see much more. If you do it early, you might not be able to see all the anatomy very well. And at 14 weeks it becomes difficult to scan for the individual translucency. So as a balance, we always try and schedule the patients as much as possible between 12 to 13 weeks so that we can get the best of both.
Because the problem is sometimes if you refer the specific urology, they think about the LMP, but there is a little bit of variation.
So again, this is the best time to date the pregnancy and see whether she has, because more than 50% of the time the dates are not reliable, and this would serve as your guide for the rest of the pregnancy.
So, FTS with NIPS, is it more than sufficient to screen most of the cases?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
FTS with NIPS, if you do that, will that screen most of the cases?
Well, your screening for FTS will include, as I said, all the other parameters we're looking for. And if you find anything positive in there, and then the patient, it's not very high, only the PAPE is slightly low, the t-test will be slightly high, the NG is normal, then you will offer an NIPS. Just look, but that again is important to note that it will only screen out the common trisomies and not the other genetic conditions.
But if you go say quadruple marker and all those, it will be a little weird, to have some intervention.
Yeah, because they're all screening tests. In case it comes positive, you will still have to confirm it by a confirmatory invasive test.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Synthesis, or we can leave there.
The best bit of NIPS is the negative predictive value is very good. So if it says it's low risk, that means more or less that you can, not 100%, so 99.9% you can say that the baby will not have Downs.
So after that we will go for quadruple test.
No, you don't need to do that. Once you have done the NIPS as low risk, you you have ruled out your common trisomy. But if you then find some anomaly on the ultrasound, then you have to confirm it by an invasive testing. Suppose the NIPS was done at 11 weeks or something, and you've done an anomaly scan, and an anomaly has evolved then, which was not picked up earlier for any reason. Then you have to confirm that with an amniocentesis.
Thank you so much. So wonderful talk it was, and very useful.
Thank you.
Dr. Sita, I'm sorry, apology for all the confusion, but I have 3 questions for you.
Sure.
You mentioned that an early first trimester, early pregnancy scan is not mandatory. Do we understand that it is because it's a foreign guideline which the NHS or anyone doesn't want to spend money because ectopics do happen?
Absolutely. So as I said, so they have clearly mentioned it is not only for foreign, it is even for our public sector, where it is not possible to have all of them screening in the early trimester. So it's not mandatory. But if the patient has any history or if you're suspecting anything, it becomes mandatory then. So as a routine, I'm saying it's not necessary to offer. But I would guess all IVF pregnancies would have that because that becomes part of your following up. But just a patient coming and saying, I just want to know if everything is okay, it's not needed. If she can afford it, if you can do it, it's fine.
You said in a younger patient, even if you do an NIPS, as you said again, repeat it again right now, some of the anomalies will not be picked up. So
the rare genetic syndromes or the microdeletions and duplications which have not yet been validated cannot be picked up by NIPS as of now.
So my problem is, I thought that I did an ND, NIPS, and a pre-eclampsia screen, and I've done the best possible. And I told the patient everything is good, go ahead. And the patient lands up with a problem.
Problem like?
Whatever, the problems which have not been picked up by the NIPS.
So it is a screening test. That is what pre-test counseling is all about. You need to tell them that this is a screening test. It is a screening done for for these conditions. The sensitivity is so much. Nothing is 0 and 100% in science. So there is always a possibility, as Madam asked, that if you do an NIPS and then you do an anomaly scan tomorrow and you find a diaphragmatic hernia or a duodenal atresia, you have to do an amniocentesis to confirm what's happening, because the NIPS might not have ruled that out.
Right. Lastly, I am doing a first trimester pre-eclampsia screen. Very recently, I've started doing an SFLT-PIGF ratio also post 20 weeks.
I haven't mentioned that because that's still...
I've had patients where the pre-eclampsia screen was normal and the SFLT-PIGF ratio later on has gone sky high. So is it not validated still that way, that one should very nicely correlate with
the other? So this SFLT-PIGF ratio has more validation, more importance in the second and the third trimester. So in centers where they're doing it, we start off with these, but they tend to repeat it again, in the second and third trimester, and that gives a prediction if this lady is going to end up having preeclampsia towards term or adverse fetal outcomes towards term. So those, because it's a dynamic phenomenon that's happening, though as we call the, wave of placentation occurs earlier, but the way the mother responds is different. So that is why you might not be able to pick up earlier.
Right. Thank you.
I just want
Dipanjana wanted to add something.
Dr. Rajeev, because the pathophysiology of preeclampsia is in 2 spurts, and we know that SFLTS is not very significant in the first trimester. Whenever we do...
Everything is normal in the first trimester, only the umbilical artery resistance is on the higher side. 93rd percentile.
Umbilical artery. Uterine artery.
Sorry. Uterine artery resistance is on the higher side. Do you need to do something about it, or is it just an ultrasound which you follow up later, or are these also indicative of ecospirins or ecospirin 150?
So as I said, if you're doing the uterine artery Dopplers, just on basis of uterine artery Dopplers and the age or risk factors, and if she's already had a first trimester screening, which would include PAPE. So any PAPE values less than 0.4 is an indicative of this, placental pathology. In those cases, even if you don't have the PSGF, just based on PAPE, uterine artery Dopplers and her risk factors which you can start her on aspirin. Because the important factor of starting aspirin is to be started before 16 weeks, isn't it? So that would definitely play an important role.
If we detect preeclampsia, what will be the line of management later on? That's a big problem. If we detect, if there's a notch, you say that.
So it depends on how the disease unfolds. we do, as we asked about uterine artery Dopplers, every growth scan also we do uterine artery Dopplers. Because if the uterine artery Dopplers are abnormal in the suppose 32-week scan, that also is a predictor that this lady will have severe preeclampsia towards end, or the baby will have adverse fetal outcomes. So, that is the way to monitor. But how will you manage will depend on what the patient's symptoms are and, how many
because
tests.
once we say these things, patient will be scared also, because if he is not scared, but is he going to definitely having a preeclampsia or not? That is what I'm saying.
We are just going to say that we are monitoring you, we are keeping you on board, we are keeping you following up. It's not that you are going to develop it, it's just a method of screening like we do for other things. And I don't see why they will not, comply to that. They will be if you can counsel them as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
We would want the chairperson and the speaker man to stay. Can I ask Dr. Utpala to felicitate? To Dr. Somnath Gangopadhyay. Rajiv, can we have you on stage and pick, please? There we go. Our presenters, chairperson for their time. A special thanks to Redcliffe Labs for supporting the program today. Redcliffe Labs is India's fastest growing technology-empowered diagnostic service provider. It aims to make health tests accessible to all Indians through a perfect fusion of technology and world-class, state-of-art owned labs. Redcliffe Labs' core area is the business of pathology, genomics, and laboratory testing services, and offers routine and specialized genetic testing and other testing for the purpose of determination of the nature of condition, identification of a disease or disorder. I am sure all of us enjoyed the program, but before I conclude today's program, let me take the opportunity to call Team Renew on stage.